Every so often, people who do not like my videos will complain to me and say that I am trying to divide the church, that by constantly complaining about the church's support for killing children, that I am being divisive, which is, if you think about it, it's ironic because that is exactly what abortion does. Abortion is the action of violently dividing little children by dismembering and torturing them. When people in our church support or excuse or justify this horrific act, nobody ever complains that they are being divisive, but when I complain about it, suddenly I am the divisive one. Well, just a few days ago, I found something very special that I would like to share with you. In the earlier days of the United States of America, when slavery was legal, it is a sad fact that many Christians and churches did support and defend and practice slavery. Not all of them, of course, but many did. This man here is James Burney, who is well known as a staunch abolitionist and who represented the anti-slavery Liberty Party and who ran for office of the President of the United States. In 1840, he published a book here titled The American Churches, the Bulwarks or Defenses of American Slavery, where he compiled many examples of churches and church leaders defending slavery. It is a short book, about 40 pages. It has big font, it's easy to read, and it is an extremely fascinating book because many of the arguments are exactly the same. They are literally the same arguments used by Seventh-day Adventists today to defend abortion. If you understand our history and read this book, you will be shocked. What we hear today in our church is nothing new. These are the same arguments that were used by imposter Christians to defend slavery. I will be making another video showing many of these parallels, but for the purpose of this video, an important one is that the churches, they were very upset with people speaking against slavery, especially within the church, because their arguments were causing, guess what? That's right, division. They could not stand the abolitionists. As a man, as a Christian, and as a citizen, we believe slavery is right. Christian ministers should be slaveholders, and anyone who speaks against slavery should have his tongue cut out and cast upon a dunghill. Instant death to the abolitionist wherever he is caught. The opposition to slavery arises from a misguided and fiendish fanaticism which we are bound to resist. So these are fanatics. Any action by the church to address slavery should be ignored because it, quote, would tend to distract and do what? And divide our churches. What is very interesting is that the author gives many examples from the Methodist Church, and their highest authoritative body was called the guess what? The General Conference. You can't make this stuff up. The GC tried as much as possible to preach unity, but the agitation of slavery made that impossible. And interestingly, in the year 1844, the church was divided. The denomination split between abolitionists and pro-slavery segments led to the formation of the Wesleyan Methodist Connection of America in the north and the Methodist Episcopal Church in the south. What is fascinating is that the leaders tried as much as possible to hold the church together in the name of unity, but this sin was so terrible that unity was not possible. And this is exactly what we see in our church today. The great irony is that nobody today would ever argue that abolitionists were wrong in agitating an issue that was so divisive. This is especially because Adventist pioneers were aligned with and agreed with radical abolitionist teachings. Adventists were very divisive, which forces us today to ask the following questions. Is the deliberate, violent killing of innocent little children of less importance or of less urgency than slavery? If so, how? In what way is killing children less heinous or less of a moral issue? And if people don't want to be members of our church because we do not support killing children, then how is that a bad thing? Pedophiles are upset that we don't support child molestation. Should we cater to them also? These questions need to be answered. word. One well-known anti-slavery journal was the Zion's Watchman. Criticizing the journal, the Reverend Langhorne of North Carolina said that nothing is more repulsive than the work of abolitionists, and that you anti-slavery ministers should resign and give up their ministerial credentials. If you were an honest man, you should do it now. At your ordination, you agreed to obey the General Conference, and you must submit to their authority or leave the church. Again, this is exactly what we hear today. The General Conference publicly supports and officially defends killing children, but because they said so, we are somehow supposed to just sit down and obey. They have no science, no history, no facts, and especially no scripture whatsoever, but we're all supposed to just sit down and shut up and obey them anyway. This is absurd, and it is disgusting. The Zion's Watchman was published by a Methodist minister named Leroy Sunderland, who was trying to convince his own church to stop supporting slavery, and people within his church told him that for doing so he was too divisive, that he was a terrible person, and that he should leave the church or submit to the GC. Someone else attacked Sunderland and said, "Did you try to misrepresent our church and claim that it supported anti-slavery when the General Conference in their official statements have said that doing so is libel? You are a child of the devil and you will burn in the lake of fire." And you can see right here, he actually signed friend of the Bible, opposer of abolitionists. Again, this is exactly what we hear today. We are constantly told, especially by leaders in North America and the GC, that people who oppose murdering children are really bad people, motivated by Satan. So, my friends, let me tell you, when people criticize me and call me names, this only makes me bigger and stronger. I am doing a noble and godly work. I stand on the scripture. My arguments are made of titanium. They're unbreakable. They're irrefutable. And I will do everything in my power to agitate this issue as much as possible. And if this issue divides, then that's your problem, not mine. If my videos offend the spineless wimps who just want to go along to get along, then I hope to be even more offensive, more harsh, and more severe. Little children are being violently murdered, and I'm not going to join anyone in their homicidal fantasies. We Adventists will spend so much energy and so much time and money. We will make great efforts to try to win people to join our church. But church leaders, you know this as well as I do. They will never ever tell baptismal candidates about our history and teaching on abortion. They will never explain that. Abortion is always hidden from baptismal candidates because they know full well that if people found out, they would not want to join our church. So I hope that by the grace of God, I can be the most divisive Seventh-day Adventist who has ever walked this planet. I hope to be the point of the sword and bring about division. That is my aim. That is my goal. No apologies. With the wonderful promises of the Bible before us, how could anyone who loves Jesus remain silent? With the wonderful prophetic future before us, how can any Christian not seek to remove this horrible sin from God's church? So may God bless every effort to aggressively oppose this great evil. And if this divides like slavery divided, then so be it. Let's get it on, and may God's blessings abound.